Hi, HR Nation. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we have a special guest on the show. We're joined by Tonil Miller, who's the Global Vice President of Culture and People Engagement at StarTek. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Nice. I feel like we're best friends now. We've spoken so many times.
Exactly. I know about your commute. I know about everything.
Yeah. Before we jump in, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today at StarTek.
I personally see my journey as kind of picking up all the different pieces of the puzzle. So I started out as a researcher, understanding behavior change and things like that. And then started to understand that along with behavior change, it's all kinds of different levers in the organization that allow that to happen. So that could be communications, it could be culture, it could be leadership, all those things. And I saw that and I thought, wow, if this can change health behavior, which is what my particular role was doing at that time, I wonder what else we can do with this or how else this can be effective. And so I ended up going on to be an employee engagement consultant with a large consulting firm globally and wanted to understand, what actually makes people engaged in their work, what makes them enjoy their work. Because I saw that a lot of times, as we know, the stats are out there, how unengaged and how unmeaningful and unfulfilled people's jobs are for them. And I thought, if we're spending so much time in this place, yet we're not happy with it, that's a disconnect and we have to figure something out there. And so then I went on to, I think it was finishing my master's degree, and I was an executive coach in New York City. Actually, I had my own practice, and I focused primarily on women's leadership development, which, as we know, again, there's a gap there. So I thought, you know what, this is something I really want to understand as well. And then from there, joined a couple of different global consulting firms doing things like change management, leadership development, that type of thing. And then recently, just about 6 months ago, I pivoted a bit into my new role, which is a global VP of people engagement and culture. And as you mentioned, essentially the focus is really more on, it's not as broad as every initiative that's happening in the organization. It's more tailored and focused on the people experience and really being able to have a more direct impact on their day-to-day work and their day-to-day experience so that we can kind of get at that engagement piece.
Amazing. I love the diversity of your background as well. You've kind of gone into quite a few different areas, which is really, I'm sure has really helped you become more well-rounded in what you do. I'm always interested to ask this question. What kind of took you from the dark side back into the light side, from consulting back into a practitioner role? Because this is one of your first very senior practitioner roles, right? So how did that happen? From PwC, I believe was your last role, right?
Yep.
To Global VP of Culture People Engagement at StarTek. How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where I loved PwC. I loved the firm. They gave me so much. I can't even tell you, and I would gladly go back at some point. But obviously we're learning all the time and we're always growing, but I didn't feel like my learning curve was as steep as it had been for the years previously. And it just kind of felt like it was time. You and I talked about this a couple times ago, I think, where, if we feel ourselves getting towards our comfort zone, we kind of try to dip our toe out of it or push ourselves out of that box because we always want to be growing and expanding. And it just felt like a natural way to be able to do that. And it's definitely a stretch, but I feel like I'm definitely growing into it. And I was definitely being given all the tools earlier in my career. And now I'm being able to put them to use.
Yeah. I was actually at a private LinkedIn roundtable on Monday. And one of the pieces of research they were presenting is demystifying when people say, people leave bad managers. That's the number one reason people leave companies. And they basically said that's completely wrong. And based on their data, they leave companies when they don't feel like they're growing and developing. That was the number one reason people leave organizations. Whereas in the past, it was always, people leave bad leaders. And I wasn't surprised. People in the room were like, oh, very surprised. I was like, I wasn't surprised. I was like, that's exactly the reason I left and started this company. I was there for 10 years doing the same thing over and over again. And every time I expressed that I wanted to move into different parts of the organization and grow and develop, they're like, nope, you stay there, Chris. You're doing great. You're doing a great job. And I'm like, yeah, I am doing a great job, but I want more. Yeah, it's doing great, but it doesn't mean I want to stay here forever.
Well, especially with millennials too. I mean, I don't want to, again, bring it down to a generational thing, but we know that that's a very big theme with millennials. So I'm not at all surprised that this roundtable that was done recently found that versus the old boss thing. I think back in the day, I could see how it would have been the boss because that's just the structure. It was just kind of like, well, my boss is my boss, command and control. I do what he or she says. And so if they're really good, that's great. If they're not, it's, time to get out. But now to your point, that's just table stakes at this point. That's just to be the bare minimum. And then the development piece on top of that is becoming table stakes as well, I think.
Yeah. We were talking beforehand about the the future of work, right? We keep hearing this, and I've done God knows how many episodes I speak about the future of work. What does the future of work mean for you? Because I know you also very early on you addressed this with PwC, and I think they've done a great job from I remember our last conversation in terms of developing leaders like yourself for that sort of digital future. When you think of the future of work, does it excite you? Does it terrify you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are terrified of it, just because lack of knowledge, uncertainty around what is going to happen. I'm actually really excited because I think one of the big pieces that I've picked up along the way in my journey is that people need meaning in their work. They need fulfillment, and so many of them don't get it. I mean, I can't put a number on it, but majority probably don't have it. And I think the future of work is actually in many ways going to give us an ability to bring that meaning back into the equation because depending on the industry and that type of thing, we're seeing a lot of the menial, mundane tasks being automated. So robots are going to be doing that or are doing that or AI, that type of thing. And then that means that people are freed up for that more strategic value add work where it's actually a challenge, you're learning and growing by doing it. And then also we can build the meaning back into work. So I'm extremely excited about it. I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah. What advice would you give to those people that are currently doing those administrative tasks?
Well, it's easier said than done. You know this. When
Yeah.
you're someone who loves challenge and loves the ambiguity, it's easier for us to say, get with the program, people,
Yeah.
and get comfortable with it. It's easy to say it, not easy for them to actually feel that way. But I would say you kind of have to, no matter what level you're at, you need to get comfortable with that ambiguity. And just as fast as everything is coming nowadays, you really have to. And when it comes to like those administrative tasks, I would just say, you have to be fluid. And again, you and I talked about this last time. A lot of the firms like PwC, I think Accenture, a lot of them are spending a ton of money right now upskilling their people. So this is an amazing investment these organizations are making in their people. Instead of just saying, by the way, a robot's coming in, your job's gone, they're actually giving, I don't want to say giving people a choice, but they're kind of giving them a choice and saying, hey, we know this is coming. We're not going to lie to you. This is coming. We are going to upskill you in the best way we can. And they're giving their people lots of opportunities. I mean, PwC, they're doing amazing things, just like Accenture, in the sense of, giving all of their people a baseline digital acumen, all kinds of like Tableau and Alteryx and all these amazing software and AI and machine learning, and just really giving them all kinds of information and training that they can go into. There's different digital badging programs and things that are happening. And the cool thing is that people, when they leave the organization, if they do, they can take these badges with them and they're actually recognized, out on LinkedIn and some of these other platforms. So that's one of the cool things that I think the companies that get it are doing.
Give us an update on some of the projects you're working on, how they're going.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the beginning of my time here so far has been a lot of collecting data points. So like I said, traveling around the globe, meeting the leaders, meeting the folks on the ground in our centers, finding out what their pain points are, what it's like to work there, what the culture is like, and all these different nuances and impacts. And so then, we did that. And now a couple months later, now we have started, implementing things. So we've got a new vision, mission, values, culture, a new purpose, that type of thing, a joint purpose. And we're about to release that, which is very exciting. I'm actually starting my own podcast in the organization. Never thought I would want to, but
I've been preaching people I was like, if you're going to, especially with bringing together two different cultures, different organizations, what an incredible way to do it. Start a podcast, bring on different leaders from different organizations, bring them together. And then also, please, by the way, don't do what everyone else does. And I'm going to say this on the podcast to put some pressure on you. Make sure it's publicly available.
Yeah, that's what we were looking at too, whether it would be a YouTube channel or whatever.
Yeah, your outside voice should match your inside voice.
Yes,
so whatever you're saying internally, you should be happy to share that with your stakeholders and your customers too. And that's
transparency.
Huge for your brand awareness. It's huge for attracting employees. It's just, there's so many benefits to doing so as well. I can't wait to listen to it. Please let me know when you launch
I definitely will. And the thing is we've got a new CEO too, right? So in the merger, there's a new CEO, and a lot of the people don't know him.
What a good way to introduce him. Introduce him to the company. Forget about an announcement in a newsletter. No one cares about that, or an email. The engagement is just not going to be as strong. Whereas if you creating a platform where, guess what, your audience, who's your audience? Your audience are millennials.
Yep, exactly.
They're call center staff, which makes sense to them that they're millennials. That's the type of people you're hiring. Exactly. Why not give it to them in a format that they already consume anyway? I'm sure I can't wait for that.
So
Nice.
that'll be exciting, I
Is
think.
the CEO up for it, or you don't know yet? He's not here yet.
Yeah. No. He's cool. He's very
What
cool.
do you want to do?
Yeah, he's very millennial sensitive in a sense. Like that's why they brought me in, right? Because he understands the importance of speaking millennial speak and Gen Z speak, all that. He understands the importance of all that. So yeah, he's super fun and he's engaged and he's excited about that as well. So that's one of the big things is launching all that and the culture activities that go with it and all those sustainability mechanisms that go with that. Also, one of the biggest pain points we noticed when I was traveling was leadership development. There's a gap there in our organization, as there are in many organizations.
In what sense? Is it just not being done at all?
Well, if you think, and this is something that was new for me because I'm new in this industry, right? But what I've learned is because this particular business process outsourcing, customer engagement industry with call centers is so like time focused, right? Like tight on time, you got to be ramped up at certain times and call time and all these different things. So what happens is and turnover can also be high, right? So imagine this, you bring someone in the organization, maybe they're ready for promotion if they've stayed long enough, which again is kind of a hurdle in some cases. If they stayed long enough, we want to give them leadership development training, but we don't have time. So let's just get them on the floor, they'll sink or swim, they'll figure it out. And think about it, this cycle keeps happening over and over and over. Nobody, no matter how senior you are in the organization, has ever been trained on being a leader or leading people or anything along.
Well, I didn't, by the way. I was just thrown into a sales floor, exactly the same
you get
thing.
it. Exactly.
And then I was very successful. And then one day I was like, Chris, you're a great salesperson. Now you're now going to lead the team. And I was like,
yeah, that's not the same skill set necessarily.
And I was like, no, it wasn't at all. And many of my peers fell flat on their face. They're incredible salespeople. It's a whole new world. And I luckily was, learned pretty fast. I had no choice. It's very
so you totally understand it then. So that's the we're talking about. And so you think about that and then you couple that with like lots of different cross-cultural styles. Like in some of our locations, we might have folks that are from 5 or 6 different countries and maybe very different cultures in those countries. And so there's no cultural dexterity training, none of that. So my team is awesome. And I partnered with all the global training teams, my training team, all of them. And we basically have come up with this extremely robust leadership development program. And also what the other part is that today, a lot of our training is instructor-led, costing, right? It's not scalable at all. So it's like little pockets of the organization will have some good leaders, but that's it. So what we've done is the team is now migrating all of that material to very fun, gamified, bite-sized, virtual, e-learn, all that stuff, the way that millennials want to learn today. So here's another challenge. There's never not a challenge, but that's why it's fun. The half of the organization that was the other part that merged with StarTek, they have separate instances of Moodle, but each country has their own version. So nobody's on one global platform. And then on the StarTek side, the legacy StarTek side, we're on some other platform called Docebo.
I know how much of a pain it can be, especially when you're moving 2 companies together, different platforms, and migrating all of that. Especially when you have not even 2 platforms, you've got different countries using different versions.
Probably got like 12 or 15 total different platforms that are not speaking to each other.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's
and that's why we really need to have that, because this program itself is going to be
doesn't work otherwise.
Yeah, we have to do it globally because everyone's going to be required to do it too. That's the other part, not just here's some training, but
are you linking it to their performance?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yep. So what would your advice to be to anyone else that's going to jump into a similar position where you jump into a business that's just acquired another organization, you're having to where do you merge different cultures, products, processes, tools? Where do you start?
Like you said, building the relationships. I mean, that is number one. You have to, because again, I'm coming in brand new. Granted, I have a track record at my other organizations, but I don't have a track record here. So to come in and you have to be, what I think, extremely authentic and extremely genuine and really, and obviously that has to come from your heart being in the right place. Like I know why I joined the organization. It's because I wanted the challenge. I wanted to make it better. I want to get my hands dirty with everybody doing it. But so first of all, I would say if you don't come from that place, it's probably going to be really difficult because people will be able to tell. And, but yeah, so do that, build the relationships, put in the time and effort, especially up front, because again, that's where you're building your foundation with everybody. And you have to really understand and make the best or the most of those travels as well, right? Because you're not going to travel all the time. So you have to really do that. And what I've done since too, and this is something that I've heard is not as common in the organization because there's a lot of silos still. I've heard that, one of the things I do is whenever I have a conversation with a training team or with a geo leader or HR leader, whatever, I always try to bring everybody, not everybody, but everybody that you can to collaborate. So for example, if I'm going to be meeting with my geo leaders from the APAC region, I'm going to bring the ones from the US and the other ones as well. So we can all be on the same call and kind of weigh in and hear the information together. And that's also bringing them together. And I was told on the side that a lot of times they're never brought together otherwise, which is
seems
really
crazy.
like, so you don't even know your colleague, your counterpart in Asia or your counterpart in South Africa? No, not really. I'm like, you need to. So the good news is my role is global. So that's really
It's a big part of HR though, isn't it? Is bringing the business together in many ways and making those connections. I always see HR as the center of the business in many cases, and you're kind of connecting the dots of everyone else. It's very underappreciated in many ways. And the fact that was so obvious to you, but these people have been in the company maybe for years without even knowing their counterpart in the organization. Exactly. It seems pretty crazy to be able to do that. What does your current team setup look like?
So it's interesting because when I started, I wasn't supposed to have a team necessarily, or at least it wasn't part of my role. I would just be kind of that individual contributor. But from almost the very beginning, there were some shifts in the organization. And so then I was lucky enough to get a global leadership development team to start reporting to me, which is great because the team is absolutely talented and fantastic. And so, like I said, they have been the ones leading the charge with me on this leadership development program that we're rolling out globally pretty soon here. So that is my current team, but I've noticed that things shift somewhat quickly in the organization just because, when there's a merger, different people leave, different ideas change about what we want the structure to look like, that type of thing. So as of now, that's what my team looks like, but I'm sure that will change again.
Sure. What were some of the hard and soft skills that you came up with the team that your leaders kind of require?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. So my particular team right now, it's not necessarily changing their skill set, but maybe capitalizing on certain skill sets that they have that we didn't before. So for example, a lot of our team used to deliver instructor-led training, and they're great at that. But now a lot of our training is now moving, like I said, towards that more digital training. So they're doing less of the instructor-led and more storyboarding those materials for our instructional design team to actually transpose it. But I would say if you were to think broader, as far as HR in general, I think the skills that are really important right now are things like understanding, people analytics. I think that is a emerging and soon to be very important skill, if not already.
It already is.
Yeah, it already is, right? I think that's huge. And I think, of course, when you think about like the leadership part, when I think of HR, typically they're thought of as a cost center and not a strategic partner to the business, or not even a strategic seat at the table. And I think that's something that needs to change, if it hasn't already, in people's organizations, is that they, as an HR person, instead of being reactive order takers, it's more like we need to be strategic business partners and actually advising the CEO and advising the leadership team and being on that leadership team essentially on, how the people strategy will actually impact the business and how the people strategy can actually carry out the goals of the vision.
Have you had any sort of backlash from some of the leaders? Because you're coming in now saying you can't pretend that both of these cultures have come together and everything's fine and dandy. As well, how you've been dealing with that. I appreciate you got your early adopters, but there's also ones that are never going to turn around. How are you dealing with those guys?
Yeah, I got to tell you something really interesting that I've seen. Because again, I visited our locations in the U.S. as well, and the Western side of the world. And I would say from the ones that I've visited across the Philippines and the U.S. and some of the more legacy StarTek organization, I feel like they all, from what I've seen, are already doing the servant leadership and the coaching, and they're very good at that, actually. It's the other organization that we had merged with that I think they're just had more of an older school model. So it's places like India, Malaysia, South Africa, a little bit of, I think Latin America was in there as well. And so some of those, I've just found that those were the locations that had more of that command and control. And so to your point, you're getting at the meaty question. There hasn't been pushback. I think there's been a little bit of, from what I gather, this is what it's like. It's like, they know that the millennials want to not be led that way. Like they know that the world is different now.
I don't think anyone wants to be managed that way, to be honest.
Nobody. And that's what I always say too. It's not just a millennial issue. It's a human nature issue, right?
Yeah.
So I think they know that is the case, and they just have, it's almost like when your environment.
It's because they've been managed that way before.
Exactly.
And it kind of it's way, I know exactly where you're going. Exactly. And I was the same.
Environment allows it, but now it's changing. So now it's kind of like, no, now we're part of this newer environment and the millennials are like running it. You know what I mean? So now we need to understand how to.
And I'm sure they want to, deep down, they want to lead that way.
Yeah, of course.
And this is a good catalyst for change for them. It's never enjoyable or I don't understand how people can manage that way. I could never do it. You're obviously on this interesting journey in the organization at StarTek. What does the sort of the next 4 to 6 months look like for you? Because you spent the first few months building relationships, right? That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Because you can't go to them immediately with change without building their trust and getting their buy-in. So now you have the buy-in. What's next?
So the next thing is, like I said, launching our merged culture, launching the new leadership development program, and then also kind of working that through the organization. Because once we launch it, we also need to make that part of our competencies and, like you said, KPIs and metrics going forward. So that's going to be a beast. That's going to be a very important part of it. The other piece is technology, right? So we're looking at all sorts of different apps that are like employee engagement, that offer all kinds of different, like Slack for work or Facebook for work, things like that. We're looking at lots of them. So implementing something like that globally will be another big piece. And then there's a lot of other smaller things and probably larger things that will come up that just come up once you launch a new culture. So for example, getting out there and talking to our people more often. The culture podcast will be probably a couple times a month. So kind of like, rolling out all these new initiatives and things that are happening, but also stopping to take a pulse check, right? So I don't like the annual survey. I want to be out there pulsing people as often as possible, whether that's through an app or the podcast, or if it's just, discussions.
Use Glint for those guys.
Yep. I've been speaking with them.
Yeah. I was speaking with them on Monday as well. I was with their global head of people analytics and insights at that same dinner. Amazing. The stuff they're doing. No wonder LinkedIn purchased them.
Yeah. Right.
I was in the room and I was like, no wonder LinkedIn have purchased you guys. You're doing some incredible things as well. So yeah, if you guys
great stuff out there, like you said, even the LMS, I think 360 learning that you mentioned, it's like, it's like, not just millennials, but in general, everybody expects that user experience and all their technology and all their things at home. So of course they expect that in the workplace as well. So that's one of the big pieces for us, is getting all of our technology to be much more user friendly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it has to be. And that was funny you say that, because I was speaking to the global sales director of LinkedIn and he said, what was the main thing you took away from the Glint presentation? I was like, how easy it is to use. It looks like you download the app on your phone. Your employees want to use it. They're going to fill in the feedbacks. They're going to give you their feedback and complete the survey, because it's as you mentioned, you're giving them the user experience they're already getting outside of the workplace with their current apps, whether it's, Amazon Prime or Netflix or any of these online platforms, which have spent billions of pounds refining that user experience. Don't try and reinvent it. Be where they are. Go to them.
That's so true.
Not go the other way around. And it's similar to why we chose 360 Learning. It's like, I didn't even need to send out a communication message or a video saying this is how you use it. And similar to what Glint said, they made this whole launch about how you should use it, and they realized people are like, we don't need it. Just stop sending us these emails. It's so easy to use. You don't need to do a whole series.
Awesome.
They did an online training session of how to use Glint software, and it had a massive drop-off rate. And they were like, oh my God, 50% of the people haven't turned up for the training. So they were like, oh, what the hell is happening? And when they delved into it, because imagine that, they're like, oh my God, this is not working. When they delved into the analytics, as they do, because that's what they do, they were like, oh, people are just saying they didn't turn up for it because why do I need to turn up to a training session of how to use an app?
Yep, exactly.
Isn't that funny? I was like, it's good job, guys. Well done. That's a kudos to you that no one turned up to the training because it's so easy to use. I thought that was a pretty cool story of being able to do it. Yeah. Fantastic. I think me and you could talk forever.
Definitely.
A separate podcast. Well, we're going to jump into the quickfire round, right? If you listen to the show, you know what's coming. You've got five questions, no more than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
Okay, ready.
All right. What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR leader?
Honestly, I don't think there was actually anything.
Nothing. All right. Fair enough. You know why I know you're telling the truth is that you were at PwC and you got offered a first senior role as a global VP of culture engagement. And you was like, yes, hell yeah, let's do it.
Doing it.
Amazing. I love that answer. That's an honest one. Be honest, right?
Yeah.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I like that quote by Kennedy, to those who much is given, much is expected. And I know it's not necessarily a business context, but I think that applies very well to leadership. If you're in a leadership role, you need to be that servant leader and you have to be taking care of your team.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. What's one book you'd recommend to our audience and why?
I read so much. Okay, I'm going to give you three. I'm going to say Simon Sinek's book on your why, finding your why, Dan Cable's book, Alive at Work, and Marshall Goldsmith's book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
I was say which one. He's got so many.
I know they all have so many great books.
Yeah, amazing books, and I'll definitely link them in. And then, what's some internet resources you use personally to develop, keep up to date with current events? You know, if I look at your Chrome browser, what's up there?
I'd say LinkedIn, just because, you know, you have your feed set up on all the different organizations you want to follow. So for sure, LinkedIn, just lots of listservs from all kinds of different organizations like yours, and, you know, just like all these other ones. I don't have any names off the top of my head, but podcasts, LinkedIn groups, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think start paying LinkedIn for all these recommendations I keep getting. No, it's getting out of hand now. And what's one thing about your current business that you're most excited about?
I think the future of work, I mean, again, in any business, but especially ours, because a lot of our work is moving a little bit to chatbots and AI and things like that, so that the people that still work in the call centers actually get to do much more challenging calls and things like that. So like the really easy, boring, monotonous calls, those are going to be automated at some point. And then again, more meaningful conversations are going to come out of the other ones.
Yeah, it's exciting times.
It is.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for joining. I'm really we had 3 conversations and we finally made it happen.
Yes,
So
we did.
Thank you for joining us on the show. I'm really excited for you, and I look forward to following your journey over the next few months. I'll be keeping track to see how you're getting on as well. Before we wrap up, if there's sort of one parting piece of guidance you could give to our listeners, what would that be? And also, if they have any questions for you, what's the best way they can get in touch?
Yeah, I guess I think that the main piece of advice that I always give everybody is really just like trust your gut and measure success by your own bar, you know, because when you're on your deathbed at the end of everything, it's only going to be you, right? So you have to live with regret or no regret. So I would just say measure success by your own bar. And other than that, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. Feel free to reach out there.
Fantastic. Well, guys, as always, as you know, if you head over to hrdleaders.com, you'll find the show notes from the episode. Everything we're talking about are linked there. Apart from that, thank you so much for sharing your journey and insights with us. And I wish you all the best until next week.
Sounds good. Thank you.